of the show, but you wanted to get in. My first question is, why is it so important to you to jump on the phone tonight? What do you think of the coalescing by some in the Democratic Party around Joe Biden tonight?
Thank you, Ari, for having me on. I thought it was important to come on and say a few words as a Bernie supporter on this network that the coalescing that's happening tonight, that's happened in the last 24 hours, is clearly, obviously intended to try and stop Bernie's momentum. Bernie still is the front runner. He still has the most delegates. He's still number one in all the nationwide polls. And he's number one in a majority of the polls for tomorrow's election. So they did everything they could up until this point. It couldn't stop the momentum. And now, I mean, it's so sad that Mayor Pete and Amy couldn't somehow. They couldn't even go 24 more hours. It wasn't going to cost them any more money. It wasn't going to cost them any more work. They put a year of their lives into this. But obviously, I mean, this push has been going on since before the last 24 hours to get people to drop out and coalesce around somebody. Remember, 3 weeks ago was that Bloomberg was going to be the savior. And then the debate happened, and then Biden had this great victory on Saturday. So
well, Michael, since you bring up the other candidates, let me jump in and press you on that. And as you know, we debate it out with everybody here, so people can make up their own minds. Yeah. You just cited several people that did build a type of support. Certainly, Amy Klobuchar, as the senator from Minnesota, has her constituents, and she has her campaign supporters. Pete Buttigieg, a newer voice who built a national following. You seem to be putting their choices in a negative light. What do you say to them and their allies who would argue that A, they're making a positive choice for Joe Biden and what he represents in the party, and B, to the extent that there's a rush, some argue that it's a rush because they seriously worry about the Sanders agenda on policy and the Sanders political standing on the ability to beat Donald Trump?
Well, the first part of that is right. They are worried about Bernie Sanders' policies and the things he's going to do to bring health care available to all Americans, not according to how much they've got in their wallet, and all the other things that he's going to do. It has frightened them. Listen, I've lived long enough, and Ari, you have too, even at your young age. You've lived through enough elections. Tell me one time when you've seen major candidates, especially Mayor Pete, who won and tied an election, a primary, when you've seen them drop out the night before the big enchilada. The night before, when they drop out? The day after, the Super Tuesday primary, which is tomorrow.
Well, let's get down to it. Are you arguing, Michael?
Who drops out the night
You're asking questions, but you're here to give your view of the answers. Are you arguing something sinister about the Democratic Party here?
No. I'm agreeing with you that they are afraid of Bernie Sanders. And so this is a Hail Mary move to let's get them all on the stage tonight. Let's get whatever has to happen. Whatever discussions went on before yesterday, they were convinced that this is the move. They should have been allowed to go through the election tomorrow and have their voters vote for them. But this is the whole concept. This is what bothers me about really either party. But I hate to see it when it happens in our party, where we want to take the right of the people to have their say. That's tomorrow. Let them have their say, whether they want Biden or Bernie or Pete or Amy. But no, we're going to take that away. They drop out. Nobody drops out the night.
Let me play for you
primary.
As well. And I think I hear you on that. You're making that point. There's another point about who they're rallying around. We reported earlier tonight the reminder that Joe Biden's run for president 3 times. This weekend is the first time he's ever won a state. There are Democratic Party insiders.
32 years of running, he's won.
Here's what you said about Joe Biden. You're warning Democrats. This was quite a while back. I want to play for this in October. Take a listen.
Joe Biden is the center. Joe Biden is this year's Hillary. Joe Biden is not going to excite the base to get out there and vote on November 3rd, 2020. 70% of the people voting next year are either women, people of color, or young people between the ages of 18 and 35. That's 70%.
How do you square that with South Carolina?
South Carolina is not a representative of the United States. I mean, that's just a fact. South Carolina will have absolutely no impact on the November 3rd election. It is still the same. It's that the 70% of those eligible this November are young people, are people of color, are women. They are going to decide the election. And so what we have now are 3 primaries or caucuses that Bernie either won or tied, and then Saturday. For people tonight to just get so excited about, Biden finally had a win, finally.
Well, do you think, this is my last question, Michael, do you think that those people, and you're referring to some of them, do you think they are excited about Joe Biden, or do you think they are falling in line for anyone who they believe can stop Sanders?
I think they're falling in line. They're not thinking tonight about who can stop Donald Trump. They're thinking about who can stop Bernie Sanders. And it's sad to see that. And it's sad for anybody to be thinking about voting for Biden because they're afraid. They're voting out of fear. If you're afraid of Trump now, if that's what really is behind this, that if you vote for a candidate, that we take fear into the general election. Running on fear, we will lose to Trump if we will vote on fear. We will vote on strength and our beliefs.
I'm going to let that be your closing point, and I appreciate you phoning in. As you know, we've had you in person. We'll have you back in person again. Michael Moore, speaking for Sanders on a big night. Thank you. Let me tell viewers what I'm going to do right now. As promised, we have one update on the coronavirus story.